Sorry, Rob, but.
Okay, I see your camera on. Are we ready to go?
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I'm looking at the empty chair. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to board meeting here on the California Board of Legal Specialization on June 14th. To call this meeting to order 9:05 a.m. And I want to apologize for not being there in person and give my gratitude to the staff at the California State Bar for allowing me to remotely do this here from the Los Angeles office. That being said, let's take roll. Adrian, if you could please take roll.
Coulter?
Here.
Esmond? Hutchinson?
Here.
Lester?
Here.
Levin? Shepard?
Here.
Torrey?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's get right going here with our open session. First of all, is our section for public comment. Are there any members of the public that are in attendance who wish to comment on any topic of the agenda?
Well, we have a public member here. So, Faith, why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, I have no comment, but my name is Faith Pincus with Pincus Professional Education, and I'm just happy to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Welcome to our meeting, and thank you for joining. Feel free, while you're here, if there are any questions, I'm sure that the people in the room there can help address them. Okay, then that being said, anybody on the telephone public? There's nobody here in the Los Angeles office. Anybody else from the public in attendance? Okay, well, that's going to close the public comment section for now. And let's move on into the staff reports. And I will turn that over to Amy for staffing updates.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everybody. I want to start with our staffing updates. I think the last time we spoke, we talked about an open program specialist position. That position remains open. We are still in an active recruitment process. And unfortunately, we also had, a program supervisor who's left legal specialization, has worked with Crystal Boudin for a while. She's been on the project. She was here at our last meeting. It's unfortunate for us, but she had a great opportunity open up for her in the Office of Access and Inclusion. So she's moved over. She actually is still here working at the State Bar. She might come down and say goodbye to everyone, but she is going to be working on programs related to diversity here at the State Bar. And so it's a great opportunity for Crystal, and so we have an active recruitment for a program supervisor as well. All right, next item then is the Board of Trustees implementation plans for the legal specialization program. So we talked about some of these items, and this is related to the Appendix I recommendations and the implementation of those items. So at the, and there were various components. So let's start with the CBLS rules. So as you recall, we submitted the rules for, the rules were modified to incorporate the decisions that were made by the board to streamline the program. On May 17th, at the May meeting, the board adopted those modifications. And there were two components, I think, that this group had feedback on. One were the CBLS rules altogether, and as I mentioned, those were effectuated as of May 17th at the board meeting. The other rules were the conflict of interest rules. Those were not acted on. They were not adopted. They are still in the process of discussion. So for the moment, our conflict of interest policies, the ones that were originally incorporated in the CBLS rules, are active. So just an update on the CBLS rules and the conflict of interest rules that we discussed here. Now, as for the advisory commissions, we had our last meeting on May 10th. We met with all of the advisory commissions in Los Angeles. At that point, what we did is completed the review of certs and recertifications for nearly all of the committees. We had a few committees that only had 1 or 2 representatives, and we weren't able to achieve a completion of all of the certifications that we had on hand. But since that time, we worked with people online, so they were able to review through Hummingbird and grant sign-offs on some of those applications. The other thing we did is finalize the questions for the exams. So at this point, we hope to be entirely done with all of the questions by June 14th, by today. So there are a few that needed a final review. So at this point, each of the advisory commissions have finalized the exam questions. And this, I'm referring to both the essays and the multiple choice. What we also did at that meeting was we discussed the procedures and brought applications for the development of the graders program. So we're trying to recruit for graders from each of these advisory commissions. We also had applications on hand for the working group members. Again, let me remind everybody that the working groups would be the groups that we would work on, that we would work with to review the certs and recertification process that we discussed here. So we are in the process of gathering applications for those positions. We also have
Amy,
applications.
Quick question on those working groups. Did we agree on what the final guidelines are for persons who are being considered, or how we're going to recruit for those?
That is one of the items that I was going to update you, is that we're going to bring a plan at our next meeting to discuss that process, because I think at this point, and I'll get to that in a second, but we've agreed on it. Oh yeah, no problem. But it's a great question, Mark, because I think we've been debating a little bit about, what we'll be bringing, like in terms of affirming the entire list, or the items that are questionable, so we'll get to that in 1 second. But, and we didn't have that level of detail, but what we did do is try to solicit from this group anybody who's interested in volunteering to stay on that working group for the explicit purpose of working on those certs and recertifications. So it was about the recertifications and certifications on the working group, the graders, CBLS, and then also we're in the process of putting together our what we're calling our LEDGE team. This is the legal specialization, exam development and grading. So this is going to be, these are going to be the supervisors. They're all like the consultants that we use now that are going to be supervising the graders as we go through this process. One of the things that we've also done is reach out to our psychometrician who's worked on the actual grading process to give us the psychometric recommendations on what would be methodologically sound for the amount of graders that we should have. Because again, we have 11 exams with a variance in terms of how many people take that exam altogether. So for example, in some of our exams, we've had 7 people take the exam altogether. And for that same exam cycle, we've had 210. So the amount of graders that we need is going to vary. And what we want to do is ensure a fair and consistent grading process. And as a result, we brought these factors to our psychometrician, who's going to come up with a set of recommendations for us. And I will bring those to this committee here so we can discuss them. That will help us with our recruitment process. And so we're gathering that methodology as well as applications, so that those will come together. Our goal is to have our graders recruited by September for the October exam. Now, back to the working group. So we discussed the idea of having up to 5 members, depending on how necessary it is for each area, specialty area. that would look at, definitely, there were 3 categories I think that we discussed. The first was those that those applications where there was some question. There was another category where perhaps the first and second recommendation didn't agree with each other, and those that were approved by staff. And the idea is that all of these categories, there's a question of whether all categories should come to this advisory, to the working group, or whether only the first 2 categories would. And so we want to come up with a proposal and bring it to the group at the next meeting so we can discuss it and lay out what that would look like. Because I think we also need to ensure that we're meeting the timeframes as when people hear back from the application process. So how often we would meet plays into that as well.
Right, I thought that the groups were, the applications that staff essentially felt were complete and ready for approval.
Mm-hmm.
Then the ones where there are some issues, staff felt that essentially they might be ready for approval, but with some eyeballs on them. And the third were the ones where the staff identified just that they were just not ready to be approved. And that the first 2, that group in the first 2 that I mentioned would be brought to this working group.
Okay.
I mean, I think that that's essentially.
Yes. And I think we are saying the same thing, except that the third category, I described it a little different. And I described it as maybe the first recommendation by staff and the second recommendation are not conforming. So it's like, or they're both rejections or whatever the case might be. So yes, I think we're on the same page. I think it's a matter of that we need to discuss the benefits and the challenges around both of these models, and we'll bring that to you at the next meeting. But essentially, we are all agree that we want to continue the professional expertise that these members will lend to this process.
Is there,
So we don't lose out on that.
well, when we say that, is there at least a sense that there will not be any approved certification or recertification applications without eyeballs from the working group being put upon them?
Well, I think that's what we need to discuss, both the merits and the challenges with that, because part of it is a timing factor, and the other part is, I think that what we need to discuss is that perhaps 5 members may not even help us achieve. I think what we're trying to gather, which is we take a look at the names. Let's say both staff members, staff 1 and staff 2, because it's a 2-person signature process, both agree on someone. And we bring it to the group to find out, like, hey, can anybody vet with this person? All 5 members may be unfamiliar. I think we're trying to figure out or get a second opinion. And if we add that to the list, we're almost going back to that first, to the current process right now. So I think that we need to assess how this will play out. So I think we want to bring a proposal with different models, and then discuss those as a group and focus on just the working group review process.
Yeah, well, I always have this, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
I understand we're trying to fix it.
Okay.
And so one of the reasons to have that breadth is you have the opportunity for more of these applications to have somebody with eyeballs who knows or can spot problems that might not otherwise be apparent from the application itself. And we're losing that. And I think to get back to, I think some of the suggestions we were all making, I was making at our last meeting, I thought that it was presented almost, it would be almost like a rebuttable presumption. It's like if staff declared an application complete and ready for approval, there would be like a time window where that would be presented to the working groups. And it would be presented in staff believes that this application meets the standards for certification, recertification. And it would be a speak now or forever hold your peace thing. And essentially, if no one objected or brought up issues, then it would be, just so like to get the efficiency of basically having the staff do like the main stuff on the front end, while at the same time ensuring that every completed application has gone through a process by which the working groups could look at them. So, I mean, I just wanted to make clear, or at least what I thought that. Right, and I don't mean to say it, staff does a great job. And in 99% of the time, those applications really are ready for, approval. Like, it's those rare instances that we have issues.
So, and I think the model that you're describing is like an affirmation from this working group in all instances, whether it's a concern, a flag for a concern, an approval, or a denial. And so that's what we want to draft, is what does that model look like, and what are the time implications, as well as what an alternative would be, which is maybe not affirming those that staff agree on. But we'll bring those and discuss them at our next, we'll have a formal plan for those. More than anything at this session, what I wanted to highlight is all of the other items that have been basically implemented, working towards the full implementation of the Appendix I recommendations. And so, with that, I think that's the last pending items on the working groups. Adrian, did you have a list, sorry to bring this, of the total number of applications that we've received to date, just so everybody has a sense? Oh, yeah, do you mind describing? Oh, sorry, I have it right here in front of me. All right, so just so everyone gets a sense, I've talked about the fact that at the last advisory commission meeting, we tried to gather, we brought applications to see if anybody was interested in either working on exam development, grading, and on the working group. As of now, we've received 9 applications for exam development, 12 for graders, and 11 for working groups. And we're still collecting some on an ongoing.
Do we have that list, or is that?
That's just we put this together with counting applications even last night, so yeah.
Looking through my packet, I didn't see a grade sheet. So.
Oh yeah, no, those are notes, but sorry about that. So that's where we're at with our counts. As I mentioned, we're going to continue gathering these items and in these applications, because we're hoping to have our grading teams recruited by October. All right. Any other questions related to Appendix I? The last thing I wanted to mention is we really wanted to have a session where we also extended our appreciation to the working group. So one of the things that we did is we had certificates. We took pictures with each of the groups, as many as advisory commission members as we could by commission. We had cake. It was really like a celebratory event, really expressing our gratitude to this group for their years of dedication and for what they brought to this program. So I just want everybody to know that it might sound a little somber, given that it was our last meeting, but I think people really appreciated hearing how much we have appreciated their contribution throughout the years, and also helping us finalize the exam for October. Okay. All right, and one last item that I have is a recent development is remote proctoring. So, as some of you may be aware, we have been, for every California bar exam, our first year law student exam, and for our legal specialist exams, we use a high volume of proctors. If you consider, for example, last year in July, we had approximately 10,000 applicants apply for the July bar exam. We were spread over 16 separate locations. And some of these locations include testing accommodations, which have a higher need for proctors. In some of these settings, we have 1 proctor to 1 applicant. And throughout the years, we really have tried to use experienced proctors in our for our exams. And we're getting to a point that where people are terming out, they're retiring from even proctoring. And we are also having a hard time getting people to recruit. It's not to recruit proctors. It's not an appealing job to like a newer generation. For example, when we've told people and alerted them, you cannot bring your cell phone to the bar exam. We've had people walk off the job or just not take it all together because it is a security measure for us. It's a requirement, and but for some folks, it's just not doable. And so altogether, I think we've had a culmination of things that have contributed to the decline in our ability to hire proctors. And also, it takes multiple exams to really get this experience under your belt. We've had incidents that have come up where proctors are not able to respond, in moments of crisis or what can potentially become a crisis at the exam, and so that's presented some challenges to us administratively. And so as a result, we've explored other options for proctoring the exam. One of the options that was presented to us is the idea of remote proctoring, and that is using a proctor that is online, so that they're watching the person take the exam during the exam. And it's a combined effort of a human person that's watching this person, as well as the use of artificial intelligence. And so the artificial intelligence is looking for any erratic hand or eye movement, so that people who are looking down, there's patterns, the system is capturing that and alerting somebody live, and that allows our proctors to walk around. And so that we would never remove like the human intervention, but it is another set of eyes, and in some instances, a substitute for the floor proctors. We have 3 levels of proctors. We have floor proctors, we have section proctors, and we have security proctors. And so we would still keep those positions. It's the volume that would change. And so we brought this proposal to the Committee of Bar Examiners, and they were agreeable to it, to at least piloting the program. We brought it to the board in May, and they were agreeable to pilot the program. We're bringing it to you to give you a sense of something that we'd like to explore. There's potential we'll explore it for the October first year exam before we brought it to a larger exam. And the idea, again, is to also ensure this consistent quality of proctoring, because it is very hard to sustain. If you can imagine that we often, for testing accommodations, grant people time or time and a half, or even double time for that exam. So a 2-day exam becomes a 4-day exam. And to have the same person observe someone throughout a 4-day period can be very exhausting, and creates inconsistencies in the proctoring process. So the idea is, initially it's not even going to be a cost savings, it's really about ensuring the quality of our proctoring altogether. And so I think in the long term, the cost savings will be achieved, but initially there isn't. And again, the system would only work for those that are using a laptop. And right now, 90% of our exam takers use a laptop. That number used to be smaller, and went from like maybe in the past 5 years from 80% to 90% of people take the exam. And so those would be the only candidates that could qualify for remote proctoring, because you can't do remote proctoring without a laptop. So in terms of how much of an intervention it is on somebody's exam taking experience, it's what the applicant will experience is an intervention when somebody logs in. They have to show their ID, use face recognition to identify that person using a government ID. They'll use face recognition to confirm that that is the applicant. And again, we'll have people checking their admittance ticket to come and have a seat and make sure that we have the person at the right spot. They confirm with the online proctor, but in terms of like the announcements and that whole process of getting ready for the exam, that will occur exactly how it occurs now. We'll have the announcers, we'll still have floor proctors, there'll be less of them, and so we don't anticipate that it'll be that distracting to any of the applicants as they're going through the process.
So obviously the program requires webcam access.
Yes.
Cam access. So people taking on a laptop will be required to have a working webcam?
They're not going to be required because we know that some people either don't have it. I mean, right now, if you anybody who takes the exam needs to contract with Examplify. Their computer has to be certified with Examplify. given that it needs a Windows 10.0 version and higher, most likely that's a newer laptop and will automatically have a webcam. However, we're also buying webcams that are very easy. You just log them in and they're sitting there. So there's two modes of the actual remote proctoring. There's using the webcam that's in your laptop. We're also accommodating in the event that somebody doesn't have it or it's not working, the use of these gooseneck cameras. It's like a little lamp that sits there and it's not going to be moving. It just sits in one direction and will observe the person. It doesn't move or make noise or anything like that. And yeah, that's how that would work.
Amy, did I hear you correctly that 90% of specialist exam takers are using computers?
I'm not sure about the numbers for the specialists.
Okay, so that's 90% of
90% of our.
'Cause I would be surprised if our number was even higher.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You know, by the next meeting, we can bring you those numbers for sure, of how many people.
I mean, that would be, I would think it'd be probably in the 20s and 30s.
How much? 87%?
Of specialists?
Are you using laptop?
Wow.
Yeah, the last one when I went around, it was amazing how
That's
few
shocking.
of the
Well, I
specialist
took it a long
takers.
time ago.
Yeah.
No, it's shocking how often that number gets higher. And also, we have students that are using remote proctoring now. I mean, for the bar exam and for the, not for the bar exam, sorry, for in law school. So there are some, you know, we have online law schools and other arenas that use remote proctoring. So students are, some students are familiar with that software.
You say there'll still be floor proctors, obviously.
Yes.
There'll be people walking around. What kind of volume numbers are we talking about? Like, will there be half the number of floor proctors, a third, a fifth? I mean,
That's a really good question. So right now, our ratio is something like 30-1, meaning for 30 applicants, we have one floor proctor. For our pilot, we're going to keep the numbers the same. As a matter of fact, we might have more floor proctors just in the event. We don't want it to be a catastrophic experience for anyone. So that's something that we'll have to play with. Again, I think our cost savings will be incurred more in where we have a higher resource, a higher need, such as a one-to-one proctor ratios.
I mean, I have a perpetually pessimistic view of human nature, and anytime a system like this gets implemented, you know, I'm always, I mean, somebody's going to try to game it at the opening stages.
Okay.
I mean, and that's the only thing. I mean, and I think that actually answers one of the big things. I mean, I think is to having the same number of proctors while this thing's getting rolled out.
Oh, yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. But eventually having fewer people walk around. I mean, people just are really, you know, you just have to watch prison documentaries, or people are very clever at like how they make these sort of things. And I would just be worried if we didn't have kind of human eyeballs, you know, occasionally just kind of like keeping people honest.
Okay. And sorry, and that's one thing that we have to play out. I'm sorry, Donald, but that for the organization that we're working with, they're used to people taking exams at home, so that, you know, people have to pick up their laptop and show the corners of their room. We are still planning on having the same security so that, for example, somebody cannot bring in a prohibited item. All of that will be verified. So essentially we'll have more security.
Honestly, this sounds like we'll probably catch a lot more than like gets like this. That sounds like fantastic and slightly terrifying that we have this technology. But you know, it sounds, I would just err on the side of like that rollout period, keeping the same number of proctors. I'd err on the side of having that go longer.
Okay, I agree.
Well, and are the proctors going to have like a device that's going to be like, go check out C10, or, you know, how are they going to be prompted to go and check out individuals?
Oh yeah, that's.
I mean, is it going to be like?
Yes. So we're going to have
Yeah.
one person. So right now we have a non-intervention approach when we have a potential cheater. So that, for example, when we suspect someone's cheating, we don't intervene during the exam itself because it could become disruptive for everybody sitting around that person. More than anything, what we do is we send folks to have multiple observations, that we create incident reports in order to confirm that, and to, document that, the cheating incident or potential cheating incident altogether. We plan to do the same thing with this system so that when somebody, there's a suspected cheating, or the system has identified somebody who's actually cheating, we're gonna have one person that's communicating with all of the online proctors, and that person, I look at Adrian, but just by accident. But anyhow, the point is that that person would communicate with the section proctor and let them know, as we do now, hey, you need to put your eyes on this person, or document as you can, or get to that person as much as possible. So to create our incident reports. So it's just a second mechanism to the human intervention.
Interesting.
Yes, so more to come on that, but I wanted to give you an update, because our initial goal was to create a pilot test on this process in June at the Baby Bar, and then also to pilot in 2 locations in July at the bar exam, at one standard test site and at one testing accommodation test site. But unfortunately, we want to address a couple of security measures with our vendors, and then we will be able to do that. So all this to say that it's been postponed a little bit, but we're going to be ready to launch. I'll keep you updated on that process. Okay, so with that, are there any other questions, either about remote proctoring, staffing updates, or the Appendix I implementation? All right, thank you.
Sorry about that. Had to find the mute button. Thank you, Amy. Fascinating stuff, especially with the artificial intelligence. I'd be really curious to see follow-up on that in terms of how it works and whatnot. It's a very fascinating topic of conversation. Okay, so moving on, we'll move to the consent portion of the agenda with the approval of the minutes from the April 5th meeting. I give everybody a couple minutes to review if you haven't had the opportunity. Let's just take a few seconds. If anybody does need some additional time, actually, if you could speak up now and just say, let's take a couple minutes, and then we will move on from there for approving them if needed. So being that I'm not in the room and can't see anybody, if someone can just signal to me that everybody's looking at the empty chair, and then I'll know to move on.
We'll speak up and let you know, Rob.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure who that was. Adrian, if you can note that, please.
It's Mark.
Mark, thank you. And is there a second?
I'll second.
That's Roy.
Thank you. And unless there's any objections, we can substitute the roll for approval. Any objections?
I'm sorry, this is Dusty Overpeck. When we do a teleconference meeting, you're supposed to do votes by roll call.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let's do, Adrian, if you could go ahead and do the vote by roll call.
You got it. Coulter?
Yes.
Christensen?
Approved.
Lester?
Approved.
Shepherd?
Approved.
Torrey?
Approved.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have approval and consent to accept the minutes. Thank you very much. Moving on into the business section, subsection A, we have, excuse me, the report on financial and operational key indicators, and I will turn it back over to you, Amy.
All right. So we've attached the standing agenda item on the key indicators. Again, this is to inform the board on the health of the program, and there are 4 central indicators. The first that we've attached here is a Board of Trustees Q1 financial report. That is a report through March of this year. And as you can see, the program is operating under a slight surplus. It demonstrates that it's financially sound with a 4% increase in revenue in its first quarter. So at the moment, there are no financial concerns. The next item that gets measured as a key indicator is program growth, and that's measured in 2 ways. The first is by the count of the number of specialists. And so when you compare this year, and this is a report as of June 1st, there are about 4,987 certified specialists, which is an increase compared to last year at this point when we had 4,833. Another measure of program growth is the number of resignations. So the program has experienced a slight decrease compared to last year in the number of resignations. We have 78 compared to, I believe, 161 compared to last year. The last portion of this report is the process of maintaining 1 certification. So certified specialists must take 36 hours of specialist approved continuing education or an equivalent. And this report looks at the compliance for every 3 years. And for this report, we're looking at compliance group 1, which were initially due to report compliance by February 1st, 2019. And this committee extended that to July 2nd, 2019. So as of June in this report, approximately 14.4% have not reported, so 261, and 78.2 have. And we have a small proportion of those that resigned or revoked their certification, and that is 2.3. So overall, the program has a higher volume of specialists altogether, resulting from a decline in the resignations and it's operating financially sound. Are there any questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions. One, I want to say thank you, and I asked for a balance sheet. I see we've got one this time. That helps me understand. I note on page 2 of the statement of revenues and expenses that there is a line item with regard to transfer out to legal specialization fund of $25,300. What I can't tell from that number, what does that leave as the balance that's owed to the legal specialization fund for the monies that were borrowed? And maybe that's a breakout on page 7 of the statements of assets, liabilities, and net assets. There's a loan payable, but it's not broken down as to which portion is the legal specialization fund and what are other loans.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have that number?
We have it. Yeah, because you're absolutely right. This is rolled up for all of admissions budgets. I'm sorry, all of state bar budgets. It's not singling out legal specialization. But if you're referring to the $1 million loan that admissions took, so the first $100,000 were paid in 2018, and the second portion, second payment of $100,000 is being paid this year.
So that's $25,000 a quarter. Is that what that's designed toward? Something like that?
I think it's yeah, something like that. I think it's just $100,000 spread over 12 months.
So that leaves then, if we did 100,000, we'll do 100. So we're about 800,000 at the end of this year. Is that the end of the calendar year or fiscal year?
Calendar year. Our budgets run on calendar year.
That's what I've been looking for. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay. I do not believe that we do need to receive it, so do we have a motion to to receive the reports and operational indicators?
I'll make the motion. It's Mark.
Second.
I heard a second. Okay, Adrian, if you could take roll call for a vote, please.
Sure. Coulter,
Yes.
Hershenson,
Yes?
Lester,
Yes.
Shepherd,
Yes.
Torrey.
Yes.
So no votes received.
Okay, no votes received, so we receive it in. Moving on to letter B, the sub-item report on legal specialist examination, post-examination application statuses. And with that, Adrian, I will turn it to you.
Sure. So we have those who passed the 2015 examination. At the last meeting, the CBLS approved an extension to May 31 for them to file their post-exam application for certification. As of June 1st, 66 have not yet filed their applications. As that last extended deadline had just passed, those remaining 66 will have to take the exam again in order to continue the certification process. For 2017, those successful applicants have until January 2021 to file their application. As of June 1st, 65% have filed their application, and we're expecting a further increase in received applications expected. Are there any questions regarding post-exam?
How consistent is the 63 applicant, how consistent is the number of people that haven't gotten their exam in after successfully taking the exam relative to past years?
We have that information. I have to check. I can definitely get it for the next meeting.
I mean, I'm just curious. I just wonder if it's going up or going down. It's not a pressing thing.
Mm-hmm. I'll make notes. I don't know.
It seems like a high. I mean, it just seems high. Just if you're going to go through this entire process, I mean, just.
Well, I have personal experience. I took the 91 exam, and then by the time I was getting my application in, I'd gone in-house counsel, so I was no longer 25% of the practice in estate planning, so I couldn't complete the application, notwithstanding having passed the exam. So then I had to wait around until my practice evolved, where it was again 25%, and then took the exam.
It just seems high that over 10% of the people would have had some kind of experience that would essentially take them out of something that they would have spent so much time getting ready for in the first place.
Any other questions? Rob, will give it back to you.
Okay, any other questions, comments on the statuses? Okay, do we have a motion to receive?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, Adrian, please take roll for a vote.
Got it. Coulter,
Yes.
Hershenson,
Yes?
Lester,
Yes.
Shepherd,
Yes.
and Torrey.
Yes.
So no votes received.
Okay, hearing no objections, we receive the report. To subsection C, approval of advisory commission and staff recommendations regarding certification and recertification. And again, Adrian, I pass it back to you.
So we received recommendations for certification and recertification from 7 of the 11 advisory commissions. Sorry, I'm switching screens.
This seems like a really small number.
It was. Unfortunately, at the last meeting, at the last advisory commission meeting, the focus was on finalizing the exams. So a lot of the groups didn't have enough time to review all the applications or even look at. Some of the groups weren't even able to look at them. So attachment A is going to list those applicants where they are being recommended for certification effective July 1st. Or recertification effective on their scheduled term dates. Attachment B lists those certified specialists who are due to recertify on various dates up to May 1st, but have not done so. And Are there any? The proposal, excuse me, is to approve those recommendations for certain research, and then there's a second one for those specialists who did not recertify, that they be revoked if there's no response to a final communication. Are there any questions regarding this item?
I will move that we accept the proposal.
I'll second.
Okay, hearing a first and a second, Adrian, if you could take roll.
Coulter?
Yes, with the exception that I abstain from anything regarding workers' compensation.
Kirstensen?
Approved, accept.
Lester?
Approved.
Shepherd?
Yes.
And Torre?
I'll accept.
Sinoco?
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. And let me move on here on the agenda to subsection D, which is the review of the 2018 annual report of the California Board of Legal Specialization. And Amy, I turn it to you.
Yes, thank you. So, Adrian, have we handed out the report?
I got it.
Okay, so we're bringing you a hard copy of the report right now. This is the current draft of the annual report of the California Board of Legal Specialization. So historically, this is a report that was drafted and submitted to CBLS for approval. Eventually went to the Board of Trustees and to the Supreme Court. This report is no longer required, but the staff, we feel like we need to continue a version of this report. So this is adopted from the Supreme Court report. So there are no differences except that the information's updated. But we'd like to continue creating this report because I think it really highlights our statistics in terms of where the program is. It also includes benchmarks. If you look at the milestones within that, I think that will help keep a historical documentation of activities that have occurred with CBLS. So we're proposing to continue producing this report on an annual basis and bringing it to the committee despite the fact that it's no longer required to go to the Supreme Court. So the idea is for you to look at it. Again, it has a historical context as well as up-to-date information on our members, our number of licensing, a lot on, for example, the dual licensing and all the combinations that exist. So it's a very fact-filled report with really good historical context. So with that, are there any comments? And Rob, I'm sorry that you don't have a copy. Oh, you do? Okay. So you have a copy there. But with that, are there any questions or concerns or thoughts about the plan to continue this report?
I think, in just briefly looking this over, it's nice to have, especially from the historical standpoint, and it would give us a kind of a bright line to say, here's how we've done it up through 2019. Now we're changing it with the working groups, with the LEDGE team on exam development, and compare the results and the effectiveness of the program with those changes.
Amy, a question for you. I think you said at the beginning this is a draft, but is it at a point that we can receive it, or are we accepting it at this point? What is the action that's needed?
It's a review and receipt, so we're asking to receive it, but also we wanted to just gather your thoughts on whether it's a product that we should continue producing. And so, and it sounds like it is. So at this point, this is a review and receipt. agenda item.
Okay, great. So not seeing everybody in the room, and then what you're doing, if I'll kind of go on mute, and when you guys are ready to move forward, if someone makes a motion, we'll move on.
Will this report now, I mean, now that it's no longer required, would what we have in front of us, where and how, if it would be made available to the public?
I think we're, I'm gonna suggest that we keep it on our website so that we have all our reports lined up on the system.
I think this should be pretty high up there. I mean, this is essentially kind of like a very detailed, I mean, this would be what a very detailed Wikipedia page of like the CDLS would be. I mean, this is fantastic, and it's actually remarkably compact given the amount of information that's in here. This is, yeah, like this is sensational. If anything, I think this should be have like a more prominent sort of place on the website.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's a great suggestion too.
Amy,
Yes.
I think it gives a lot of valuable information to people who might not know how the whole specialization area evolved, and I think it's really well done.
Okay, thank you.
Based on this, I guess I took the second exam. It would have been 89, the state plan was added in 88, so the first exam would have been 89, and I then took the second exam in 91. Not bad. I'm that old.
You chiseled your answers onto stone tablets.
We did.
Yes, of course.
Do you want a motion to accept the report? So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Adrian, please take roll.
You got it. Coulter?
Yes?
Hersenson?
Yes.
Lester?
Yes.
Shepherd?
Yes.
And Torrey?
Yes.
Sit down, votes received.
Okay, wonderful. Then we'll receive the report as requested. We are now moving on to Section E, Certified Specialist Request for Adjustment of Legal Specialization Fees, Penalties, and Charges. And Adrian, I turn it back to you.
Sure. I'm just going to quickly hand out the request.
How come the cameras are following you around, Adrian?
I know.
So we received a single request for a fee, the LS fee waiver from she recently resigned from the program. It's Janice Tan from San Francisco. She was initially certified in estate planning on 8/1/2014. So when she submitted her general bar dues, the bar waived her late fee. So we similarly waived our LS late fee. But now that she's resigned from the program, she was requesting a waiver of the whole fee. So she resigned from the program on 4/29 of this year. So technically she was remaining certified for 3 months beyond the fee deadline of February 1st. The current balance owed is $360 for the full year. A staff recommendation is a partial waiver of the prorated for those 9 months where she's no longer certified. So it would be a waiver of $270, and we just request that she pays $90. Are there any questions or concerns regarding this request?
I don't think she should have to pay anything.
Oh, we can definitely go with that too.
And I mean, I think this is a good, it might be a good catalyst to have like a more kind of formal, like, setup for how this would go down. We would maybe have like a date. It's like, look, you know, if you resign before X date on the year, blah, 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 there's no fee, or, well, I mean, once you pay it, I mean, because like, this is, she was trying not to pay. She was just trying to go through a lot of these hoops.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, you know, for her troubles, I would just say, you know, look, I mean, it's fine. I wouldn't make her pay anything. But like, would it be possible to put on the specialist website somewhere on like, this is the procedure by which this would be done?
It's on the fee statement on the back. There's a note for specialists. If you need to resign from the program, you must do so by February 1st. Go to the forms page to get the form.
But is it on like the website? I know it's like on the, like, I would put it prominently on like the site itself.
Oh, it is not. I'll make a note of it.
Yeah.
It sounds like she did at least call someone, not the
Yeah.
correct office, and was sort of bounced around, so I would make an exception.
Yeah,
she tried, I mean.
Try to get through.
Yeah.
And being on the back of the fee statement, that's a document that you see once a year, you pay it, you throw it away, it's done.
It's very small
I
print.
think it needs to be on the website where everything else is posted, and, you know, maybe around where this report is going to be posted, that how, the procedure for resigning if you choose to resign.
I mean, I would have assumed you just don't pay the fee and you were resigned, but that's incorrect.
I have no problem with your suggestion, waive it entirely.
How often does this happen? Like, just when we have someone that's like really trying to, I mean, because at the same time, I mean, like, the devil's advocate to like my previous suggestion, Janet's suggestion is that, well, I mean, if we're gonna like put this all on the website prominently for a situation that happens once every 3 years, that might not, you know, it might not be all that efficient either. How often does this happen where somebody's like trying to get through all the red tape, like, look, I want to get out of the program?
Often, but I wouldn't say that this is, I mean, I've been with the LS for 3 years and I haven't seen like a formal request of a waiver of the fees.
Most people don't request follow up for a fee return. That would make sense.
So what do you need from us?
Okay, I guess if Aurelio is recommending a full waiver, if there's a motion for that.
Do you want to make a recommendation?
I would recommend.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
So, there was a motion contained, so I think you just need to modify the motion, right?
Oh, there's no-
Can we make a friendly amendment?
Oh,
to
there
that?
is no written motion, sorry about that.
I'll note it.
Is there a motion?
I'm typing it. So motion is to grant a full waiver.
So the previous motion was to, what, charge her $90?
Well, it was a a formal motion.
Recommendation, I would recommend charge her $0.
You would recommend what I
$0.
Zero.
And can I do a friendly amendment to that motion and say, based on the fact that she tried to withdraw in the month of January, that we would recommend not charging any fee and
Right,
refunding
that's
the
fair.
full amount? Just so that's on the record in case
In case somebody else comes in and tries to.
February, March, April.
Actually, she tried to do something
She
at
did
the start
try.
of the year, which would be within the
Yeah, this
period.
specific situation.
Okay, so I have it, grant full waiver based on facts of good faith effort to resign from program.
Before February 1st.
Oh, excuse me. Resign from program before February 1st, 2018.
And I'd second that.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay. All right, Adrian, if you could please take roll call for the vote.
Coulter?
Yes.
Personson?
Approved.
Lester?
Yes?
Shepherd?
Approved.
Torrey?
Yes.
So no votes, it passes.
Okay, perfect. And so Adrian, will staff then communicate to the person?
Yes, I'll reach out to that attorney early next week.
Okay, perfect. That then takes us through the end of section E, which, unless there's anything that is not on my agenda that I'm looking at, is actually going to take us through the conclusion of the open session. Is there any other business that needs to be addressed prior to closing the open session?
Can I mention one quick thing? Sorry. I failed to do this when we first started, but I didn't get to introduce Dusty Overpeck. You might be wondering who she is.
Who is this person?
So my apologies. Rob, I just want to introduce Dusty Overpeck. She is our general counsel here in the Office of Admissions. And I think this might be her first CBLS meeting.
I have been on another telephone conference meeting one time, but yes, nice to be here.
Thank you. And keeping us on task too, you know, with the, we had to take the role, so I like that.
It's nice to have you.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, well, hearing nothing else, I want to thank our public member for joining us today at the meeting, and you know, as you know, you are always welcome to join us when we have them, and they are also available after streaming live and then after the fact on the archive through the State Bar's website. So thank you very much for joining us today. And hearing nothing else, we will officially close the open session, if you will, at 10:06 a.m. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Rob.
very much.